Russian spy ship, the Kildin, as the vessel packed with intelligence-gathering equipment drifted temporarily out of control off the Syrian coast on January 23, with flames and black fumes rising from its smokestack. The Associated Press obtained audio of the broadcast, as well as video and photos showing the blaze, that 3 military officials said were gathered by a ship from a NATO nation operating nearby. The officials, also from a NATO country, spoke to the AP on condition of anonymity to discuss the fire and radio transmission that Russian authorities haven't publicly reported. The audio provides an unusual peek inside Russia's fleet of spy ships that NATO nations are watching closely because of concerns that Moscow might sabotage underwater cables and pipelines amid tensions over the war in Ukraine. Even though the Kildin was in trouble, the secretive ship didn't respond to an offer of help from the NATO vessel, the official said. The 55-year-old Kildin gathers intelligence on NATO activities in the Mediterranean and had been operating near naval exercises by alliance member Turkey before the fire, according to the officials who spoke to the AP. They said the blaze burned for at least 4 hours and that the Kildin's crew removed the covers from lifeboats, though they never put them to sea. The Kildin also hoisted 2 black balls from its masts, a maritime signal that the ship can no longer steer, the officials said. They said the crew eventually regained control and that the Kildin is still stationed and gathering intelligence off the Syrian port of Tartus, accompanied by a frigate and a supply vessel. It is not clear what caused the blaze. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said he wasn't aware of a fire aboard the Kildin and didn't say what the ship was doing at the time. He dismissed suggestions that it reflected poorly on Russian naval readiness. Assessing the state of the fleet based on the breakdown of one particular ship or one particular malfunction is not professional, Peskov said.
At the port of Tartus on January the 22nd, after weeks of idle wandering off the Syrian coast, the heavy weapons, military vehicles, artillery and ammunition crates guarded by soldiers had been waiting for weeks at the port of Tartus to be loaded onto ships.
Far from its bases in the Arctic and the Baltic
Syria's
Sea.
new government terminated
Moscow
the 49-year
also is no
lease.
longer able to use its Black Sea fleet for Mediterranean patrols because during the Ukraine war Turkey isn't allowing warships to pass through the Bosporus, which links the Black and Mediterranean seas.
Black Sea. Under a treaty signed a year ago, certain warships are not allowed to pass through the Bosphorus Strait. While Russia's submarine fleet remains a formidable force, its surface fleet is increasingly aging and looking like a rusty fleet that is falling apart. It is possible that the Russian Navy will attempt to maintain some form of presence in the eastern Mediterranean in the short term. Ukrainian military analyst Serhiy Zagurets says that in January, Ukraine struck 30 Russian targets, a third of them military-industrial facilities. He spoke about this on Espresso TV. Recently, Ukrainian UAVs hit a Russian oil depot in the Krasnodar region of the Russian Federation. This is another continuation of the Ukrainian concept of destroying Russian refineries and oil depots. Last year, Ukraine attacked 84 facilities of the Russian oil refining industry. This is for the entire year of 2024. In January, the Ukrainian Defense Forces attacked 30 Russian facilities, one-third of which were defense and industrial facilities. The rest were refineries and oil depots, Zagurets said. According to the analyst, the Russian oil refining complex is a key industry for ensuring the capabilities of the Russian army. The Russians are trying not to lose the opportunity to constantly supply the army with fuel oil, and lubricants. That is why the strikes on refineries and oil depots are aimed at weakening the Russian troops' ability to advance on the front line. It is the oil depots that provide the occupying Russian army with fuel oil, etc. This is a continuation of our steady trend of destroying the Russian oil refining complex. I think this practice will continue, the analyst explained. Recall on the night of January the 31st, units of Ukraine's UAV forces and the main intelligence directorate, in coordination with other branches of the defense forces, struck Volgogradneft, Pereработka, LCC in Russia's Volgograd region. On January the 31st, it was reported that Russia had stopped the transit of oil through the port of Ust-Luga on the Baltic Sea due to a drone attack on a pumping station. On the night of February the 5th, drones attacked the Krasnodar territory of the Russian Federation. Allegedly, a fire broke out at an oil depot as a result of the fall of UAV wreckage. So, Ukrainian forces have increasingly targeted Russia's oil industry, ammunition depots, and military airfields, aiming to disrupt supply chains critical to Russia's war efforts. Fossil fuel exports remain a major revenue stream for the Kremlin's military operations. These attacks are part of Ukraine's ongoing efforts to undermine Russia's ability to sustain its full-scale invasion, striking deep into Russian territory, including regions far from the front lines. The future of Russia's T-14 Armata tank remains in question. Despite the Russians' claims of improved protection, firepower and maneuverability, it faces Russian manufacturing limitations, writes columnist and analyst Isaac Seitz in an article on 1945. The fate of the Armata will most likely be decided after the end of the war in Ukraine. If the T-14 enters service, it will become the most significant tank in Russian history. However, it is still unknown whether it will enter service in full, the publication says. According to the author, of all the weapon systems used by the Russian army, none is as controversial as the T-14 Armata. The Russians keep information about the tank a closely guarded secret, so it is difficult to say whether the new super tank lives up to its reputation. More specifically, it is clear that the T-14 Armata has suffered significant production delays and cost overruns, the article notes. The tank's high cost, estimated at $5 million to $7.1 million per unit, has limited its production and deployment. International sanctions and other production issues have also limited Russia's access to critical components needed to produce the T-14. These supply chain issues have further delayed the tank's deployment and raised questions about its long-term viability. For one reason or another, deliveries of the T-14 were constantly delayed. It is currently unknown how many working T-14s are currently in service with the Russian army, but it is estimated that only 10 to 12 tanks are in service, Isaac Seitz added. At the same time, the Observer recalled how on March the 4th, 2024, Rostec CEO Sergei Chemezov stated that the T-14 had entered service with the Russian army but would not participate in the fighting in Ukraine. While choosing cheaper options during active combat is somewhat understandable, the question arises, what is the point? Why invest in a tank that will not even participate in combat? I interpret his comments to mean that production has not reached the level where the T-14 can be produced in large enough quantities, the author emphasized. According to the Russians, these tanks have an unmanned turret, which increases the survivability of the crew. In addition, the tank is allegedly equipped with improved composite and reactive armor. It was also reported that the T-14 is enhanced with the Afghanit Active Protection System, designed to detect and neutralize incoming threats such as anti-tank guided missiles, ATGMs, and rocket-propelled grenades, RPGs. It was also claimed that the T-14 is equipped with a 1,500 horsepower diesel engine. The tank can supposedly reach speeds of up to 75 to 80 kilometers an hour and has a range of about 500 kilometers on one tank of fuel. Let us recall that earlier, the main intelligence directorate of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine reported that Russia has produced only about 20 T-14 Armata tanks over the years.